Hello and welcome to Millennials Gone Circular, the podcast that's helping you make circularity a reality. My name is Caitlin Sockwell, and together with Angelica and Saeed, today we'll be breaking down what sustainability and circularity actually mean, including their origins and how they're measured. This episode is perfect for any newbies in sustainability. This is episode 2. This is Millennials Gone Circular.
Hello and welcome to our second episode of Millennials Gone Circular podcast.
Yeah.
My name is Zain, and as always, I'm joined by my two amazing co-hosts here, Angelica and Caitlin. How are we doing today? How are you doing, Caitlin?
Hello, I am well. Saeed, nice to see you. How are you,
Good to see you
Angelica?
too.
I'm very good. Very excited to see you guys. Also, I'm very excited for the second episode.
Lovely. So before we get stuck into things and the topic of today, I would like to bring spotlight to Angelica, who is going to share some good news on sustainability for us today.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Maybe for our audience, I would just like to say it's easy to get discouraged by all the constant streams of negative news, especially when it comes to like environment and of course the future of our planet. So basically, on Millennials Gone Circular, we would like to focus on the positive things that are happening in terms of sustainability in the world. And we will also just divide it in the three sustainability pillars, which are environmental, social, and economic, that, or dear Caitlin, we will explain a bit more in the future in this episode. So when it comes to environment, basically our news is like we have a record-breaking growth in global renewable energy capacity. So basically what is happening is like we have reported a significant increase in the renewable energies installations worldwide. It's over 50%. And we are just very close to like keep increasing or expecting growth, which is 2.7 times by 2030. So yeah, this is great because basically sustainable energy is one of the most important topics when it comes to environment nowadays. And this information is provided by the International Energy Agency. Now, when it comes to social, we have a growing momentum behind the right to a healthy environment, which is basically how the United Nations has recognized the right of every human to live in a not polluted air, not polluted water sources, and not polluted, for example, soils, and all the different environmental components that should be part of a healthy environment for human beings to develop and have a good life quality. So this is also very good, and you can also find more information in the United Nations website. Now, finally, when it comes to economic, it's also very good to see how all the companies are little by little, but now not so little actually. Now you can see this growth a bit more exponential and how companies are trying to become more circular from the very grounds and pillars of their own values. So it's no longer an isolated factor or like department or even like a person in the company. It's just part of the core values of the company, how to reduce waste, how to make their sources more efficient through the different value chain of the company. And all of this will be also backed up by the new amazing explosion of AI technologies that will help us to manage in a better way all the data we have of the company and how we can take better decisions on how to manage our resources based on AI tools. So yes, if you want to have more information, you can also check the World Economic Forum report that was recently released, and you will find how the data and AI are helping to create companies that are more circular and sustainable. So yeah, this will be basically it.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing those news. And I think good news and positive news is really what we want to hear today, especially with all what's going on around us today. Do you have any reflection on that, Caitlin?
No, I just want to, mimic what you just said. It's so nice to have the positive news because we're inundated with all these clickbait news pieces every single day, and it's exhausting. So it's just nice to give a little glimpse of hope a daily glimpse of hope.
Yeah, great.
Circularity, sustainability is happening around the world. It is possible. Yeah.
Definitely, I think that's what we need. So, why don't we dive into the topic of today? So, I think today we're getting stuck into the basics. We'll be talking about the concepts of sustainability and circularity and the relationship between both, and also the big elephant in the room, which is climate change. But we'll leave this for another time. We'll be having a series on this topic in the future. So to get started, I'm going to you, Caitlin. So can you take us through the concept of sustainability? So what is it actually?
Yes. Okay. Well, sure. So sustainability over the years has been lots and lots of definitions, but I guess the most widely accepted definition of sustainability is basically meeting the needs of the present. So you and I, our parents, grandparents, without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So our future children, our future children's future children. Meeting their needs. So sustainability kind of nowadays feels like almost a bit of a buzzword. And depending on your background, depending on what your parents believe or what culture you're part of, sustainability can mean different things for different people. But essentially, there is more to the word sustainability to unpack here. Actually, sustainability is more of an umbrella term, and it encompasses 3 pillars that Angelica gave us news on earlier. So we've got environmental, social, and economic. You can also people, planet, profit is also a common phrase thrown around there, and I actually like it because I like the alliteration of it. So people, planet, profit. So environmental or planet, which is the most commonly associated with sustainability. That's what most commonly comes to mind when we think of it. This represents the importance of natural resources, biodiversity, just anything supporting life here on Earth. Then we've got social sustainability, and that is placing an importance on our social structures, well-being, harmony. So these are all things that poverty and wars and injustices can negatively impact. And the last one, economic or profit. That type of sustainability pillar describes the ability of our economy to grow, which is especially important in today's society. And pretty much no initiative, whether good or for profit, they all require financing, and they all have to have some sort of strong economic rationale. So that's sort of what sustainability is in a nutshell. Interestingly, even though we've coined the sustainability term now, sustainability as a concept actually goes back to our origins as a species, right? So before globalization, before the Industrial Revolution, our very existence in life was sustainable. We used what we needed, we minimized waste, we were stewards of the land, we were nature and still are. Lots of indigenous communities around the world are still living sustainably, in air quotes, today, and it's those communities that I think we really need to be looking at for inspiration. But I guess the concept of sustainability, if you really think about it, it started coming around when we started domesticating animals and farming, and this is sort of what sparked what they call the tragedy of commons, and it's a concept I really think about often. I don't know what you think about in your spare time, but for whatever reason, I'm thinking about the tragedy of the commons more often than I should. But it's essentially a concept that if we as a people have unlimited access to a finite, valuable resource, such as, let's say, a pasture, in the case of these early peasant farmers, we'll actually overuse it and end up destroying its value altogether. So we get nothing. Even if some users, I find interesting, even if some users exercised restraint themselves voluntarily, other users of that pasture would just replace them. So the predictable result is a tragedy for everyone, essentially. So I don't think this concept is reserved for medieval peasant farmers. We're actually seeing it today with our consumption levels, the plastic pollution crisis, and I think this term may just pop up regularly in future episodes when we talk about, living sustainably and overconsumption. So that is the tragedy of commons. And maybe just a little bit of a last tidbit for some history buffs out there. I'm not a history buff by any means, but some argue that sustainability as a concept was born when the Magna Carta was signed in 1215. And the Magna Carta, essentially, what it did was protected the land rights from the monarch. And then it had a companion document to the Magna Carta called the Charter of the Forest, which gave rights to free people for basic access to the lands after it was eroded by King William the Conqueror. So I really like this piece of history because this was sort of the first official sustainability legislation. But so I guess the actual term sustainability, there's a history and origin, and we didn't always have a word to call it. It was actually, sustainability was actually first coined by Karlowitz back in 1713. So really the term has only been around for 300 years. So I guess that's I'll get off my soapbox regarding sustainability. It's just a little bit of unpacking and a little history for you on the term.
Thank you. Really interesting. And I'm really I was really excited that you mentioned about environmental sustainability as the one we usually refer to when we think about sustainability in general, but in fact it covers other aspects, social and economic aspects. And also the tragedy of the commons story is very interesting to look at because we are still living that today. Basically, even so many people are like trying to do the right thing. I think maybe many others are taking advantage of that and trying to make tragic more. So I'm also would like to jump right into circular economy as well and see what's different. But first, getting to know what is it all about. Caitlin, could you share what you have on that?
Yes, absolutely. I think though that before we get into what circular economy is, I think it's really helpful to understand our current economy. And I know the word economy can sort of make people's eyes glaze over, including my own, but please bear with me. So we refer to our current economy as a linear economy. Quite simply, that's where we take something from the earth, like oil or trees. Then we make something, like a single-use plastic water bottle that we use for maybe 10 minutes. And then we waste it by throwing it away. So it's take, make, waste. That is our current linear economy. Now, the origins of the linear economy are really interesting, and I think we could get quite philosophical here on how it's tied with our human condition, but I won't go there here. Maybe for another time. But our linear economy as we know it today owes a lot to the Industrial Revolution, which I mentioned before. And that sort of saw the beginning of a new era. So, for example, resources before that were never really used or understood, such as fossil fuels, all of a sudden became the biggest part of the economy and, led us to where we are now today. On the flip side, a circular economy is a system where the materials that we take from the earth never actually become waste, and nature is actually regenerated. So the products that we make and the materials that we take from the earth are kept in circulation through concepts like repair, reuse, refurbishment, remanufacturing, recycling, composting, or rot. All these R words are commonly referred to as the 5 or the 8 Rs, or the waste hierarchy is another common thing. So the circular economy addresses problems like climate change, biodiversity loss, waste and pollution, and it separates economic activity, i.e. making money, from using up our finite resources. And it's a way to address the tragedy of the commons. So the circular economy is based on 3 different principles, which are all driven by the design of a process or a product that someone's trying to make. And they include eliminating waste and pollution, circular products and materials, so keep keep the products and materials in circulation at their highest value. And the third is regenerating nature. Maybe, Saeed, I can pass it back to you. That's basically circular economy in a nutshell, but maybe you can give us a little bit more of a detailed look into how circular economy came into existence.
Sure. So I'm not a historian, but I'm happy to share about the history. And let's rewind to the beginning. Where actually did the idea of circular economy even come from? So in the 1966 post-war industrial boom, people like Kenneth Boulding, who is an economist, started raising flags about the linear economy and proposed a shift to regenerative and closed system economy. In the 1970s, we had the oil crisis due to shortages of oil in the Western world. So that was like a sort of wake-up call as well. Uh, a pivotal date was in 1972, when the Club of Rome, a group of intellectual leaders, released the Limits to Growth report, which warned of the nasty consequences if we just continue as we're doing, if we continue the industrialization, population growth, and resources depletion unchecked. And that's really because we realize that the resources are finite, and if we continue the way we do it, it's gonna lead us to really nasty consequences.
That's really interesting, Saeed, that we knew about this concept back in the 70s already, and really interesting.
And then the building blocks started to be founded like from the 80s and 90s by having like the concepts of industrial ecology, cradle to cradle, biomimicry emerging gradually. For instance, in industrial ecology was all about having a process or output of a process to be an input to another process. And this also led to have like industrial parks, where it's like an area where many companies have their plants, and therefore they can exchange material, energy, to try to minimize waste and so on and so forth. So as for from 2000s, the circular economy, let's say, goes mainstream, and this is where things get actually interesting. This started with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation taking the lead in turning the idea of circular economy from a niche academic idea into a global movement. In 2013, the foundation released the first report towards the circular economy, and there was like really when really things starts to happen.
That's whenever I think circular economy, I always think Ellen MacArthur Foundation.
Indeed, it's really, I think, a good reference. And by the way, a fun fact: the founder is Ellen MacArthur, is a record breaking in solo sailing, and it's interesting story. And if you have not looked at it, it's really good.
Did you say solo sailing?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. I don't think I'd ever want to be solo on a sailboat, but
yeah. It's interesting, and it's like great challenge. And yeah, I think I watched her video on TED Talks. I think it's inspiring, to be honest. I think I recommend everyone to go and watch. So from those years, I think, and specifically 2015, we had the adoption of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. And also we had the European Union establishing the Circular Economy Action Plan, in which they committed to ambitious goals such as reducing waste, promoting sustainable design, and so on and so forth. And then from there, actually, we had many other countries really adopting legislation to promote circular economy in general. For instance, China released their development plan to transition to circular economy in 2021. And we had like the corporates and the global adoption of circular economy in general, like in the last couple of years, like from 2020 and so on. I think also maybe after the COVID crisis or even before that slightly. But now I think it's become like not just a nice to have, but it's really an important element of any business. So where are we today? I think which is also very interesting. I think we have many countries who adopted already the regulations around circular economy. Major brands and companies are embracing circular design and circular business models in a way or another. Also, circular startups are booming thanks to the context and the market evolution, consumer demand for like sustainable circular products as well. But we still really have a lot of challenges ahead. Like I think if I mention a number that reflects circularity in general, I think we are at 8.6% only globally. Really not much, but yeah, we are still have a lot of things to do. I think, and that's where we are today, more or less.
Yeah,
I think so. I mean, it's very interesting how you put it, because also I was thinking about something that I was discussing with one of my Swedish colleagues when they mentioned that in the 70s, beginnings of the 80s, they experienced something called the green wave, right? And basically was like this boom of sustainability, circularity, but the early versions of it, because also there is like a very important point like in modern sustainability concepts where it's like when the Brundtland, I think that's the way you say it, report defines sustainable development as such. So this was like a crucial definition about like new or like modern sustainability concepts. So and I think after that the word has like a boom, so we started like thinking a bit more about it until the 2000s, more or less, which was the Millennial Development Goals, which are the antecessors of the 2015 Sustainable Development Goals in the Paris Agreement, right? So, but I think it's very interesting because it has been like waves, but a conclusion that I can take is like we have like peaks and then we go down, but every time that we have a new peak, it comes with more intensity and it comes like bigger. So I think that's a very interesting dynamic that I can have in the, or that I can see in society. So in this last wave, which was after 2015, I feel like, okay, it began very hard, like with the Sustainable Development Goals, but then it decreased a bit, but now it's still exploding, and I think with very harder, like way much stronger than it used to be in 2015. So yeah.
Really interesting observation, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe now we should actually talk about what's the link between sustainability and circular economy. Now that we have explored both concepts, maybe Caitlin would share more about the linkage between both.
Yeah. So I guess essentially the way I see sustainability and circularity, the link between the two is that sustainability is our end goal. That's what we're trying to work towards. That's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to set our current and future generations up for longevity and happiness and health. The way to do that, or the tool to do that, is using circular economy approaches and concepts. So if we pair the transition into renewable energies and renewable materials, then the circular economy is the way of doing things that's good for people, planet, and profit. In other words, circularity is how we achieve sustainability. And kind of going back to what you were saying before about now we're seeing it come into corporations and business models as a bit more of a status quo is really starting to explode, which is exciting. And we see that, I think, the one of the best examples is with the CSRD. So the European Union has passed legislation, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And within that, circular economy is actually a whole set of topics that a company can report on. And I think
definitely
that's so exciting, because that will have trickle-on effects. Yes, it's in the EU, but the EU doesn't operate as a silo. Of course, we have a global economy, and so it will trickle down. And yes, so that's the link. Circularity is achieving sustainability. Yes.
Yes, thank you. And I think policy has a major impact or influence over like actually implementing the circular economy in general, at country level, but also at the corporate level. And the global economy, it will be impacted by legislation and towards implementation of circular economy in general. I'm now interested actually in asking how we are tracking sustainability and circular economy. What are the indicators that we use or can be used to track how advanced we are or how behind we are? Angelica, you have any insights on that?
Yeah, well, basically, there's many ways that maybe between each other we have been discussing before. But I think one of the most important, or one of the most relevant that we're hearing everywhere today, is the Sustainable Development Goals, which basically are 17 objectives created in the Paris Agreement in 2015, where we defined, based on these two pillars that Katie already explained at the beginning, how can we make the resources that we have available today also available for the future generations, right? And also, how can we guarantee that we are going to leave them a world that it's worth to live in, let's put it in that way, not only in terms of the physical resources that we count on Earth, but also like a better society. As I was mentioning in the news, like the right to have a good environment and a good place to live in is also part of all of this new mentality that we have, that we definitely didn't have in the past. So that's why I think in this podcast, we're really trying to focus on the positive side, because I think it's definitely, we're creating things step by step to be more humans, to be more sensitive, to be more collaborative, to be more collaborative, because I think before we were so focused on just taking territory, taking resources, and just fight between each other to see who will be the most powerful and the one who get the more resources. And now I think we are on a completely different level. Where we are trying now as a humanity, as a one planet, is trying to see how we work together to get the best out of our own societies. So I think Sustainable Development Goals, it's a political agenda where we're trying to do that, as Said was saying. But for example, we have other type of agendas that measure different things, right? Or a type of indicators that measure different things. Like, for example, like the science-based targets or the Global Reporting Initiative, that they are more like science-based, they are more quantitative, they are more, in this case, focused on measuring very specific things, instead of a political agenda that it's more like proposing new values, even though they also have targets that are easily quantifiable. It's more political, and we have other targets that are more, that says physical or numerical, if you want to put it that way, and not associated with something political necessarily.
Yeah, it's great to have. Well, we know that we have multiple indicators, and the good thing is that we can put them together to really see where we are, because maybe one indicator could be a little biased, because it could be like maybe political or more like qualitative or quantitative without taking into account some aspects. But we have really, I think, many indicators to consider, and I think Caitlin has also other indicators to share with us.
Yeah, well, I think the one that's most, I guess, easy to understand. When I was first learning about sustainability, I, for whatever reason, really gelled well with Earth Overshoot Day. It was just a concept that just made me really understand it a bit more. So I think it's a good example of how we measure sustainability, or can measure sustainability. So Earth Overshoot Day, if you haven't heard of it, it's a measure that measures how quickly we use up a year's worth of resources. So in 1971, for example, our global overshoot day fell in December, which is great. That means we only need one planet's worth of resources to get us all through the year as a global community. In 2024, so last year, our Earth overshoot day was on August 1st. So that means that as an Earth, or as a global community, we needed 1.75 Earths to provide us with all the resources that we're using up in a year. So
yeah, we wanted to go to Mars, maybe.
Yeah.
Because we don't have enough planet for this.
Exactly. Last time I checked, we only have one Earth. Mars can't give us what we need.
Yay.
You know, so that's on a global scale now. So individual countries are also measured. So today is what, the 15th of Feb that we're recording this. Qatar, the country Qatar, their overshoot day is actually already passed. It fell on the 6th of Feb. So this means that Qatar as an entire country, they're not the biggest country in the world, but they've already used up an entire year's worth of Earth's resources that was meant to last them the whole year. So that's a bit wild. But a country that we can all learn a little thing or two from is Uruguay in South America. And they currently are the country with the latest overshoot day, falling on December 17th this year. So ideally, December 31st is what we're aiming for. So no country is doing it perfectly, but Uruguay is our champion of last year. So I would highly, we'll put some links in the show notes, but head over to the Earth Overshoot Day website and you can actually track your individual country and see where you guys stand. In terms of circularity, measuring circularity, Circle Economy, which is based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, assesses global levels of circularity, and they do circular gap reports in specific countries that basically hire them to do so. I think, Saeed, you kind of elicited to it before, but in 2024, our world economy was only about 9% circular. So this is a huge circularity gap for improvement. And I'm thinking, we don't have to get to 100% circular. That's technically not, that's the North Star. Yeah. But if we just got to 17%, just doubling the percentage of circularity that we have now, that would make a big enough impact on our global emissions, on our biodiversity loss, to actually keep us within the Paris 1.5. So, which I think we'll explain a bit more in our climate change series coming up. But we don't have to get 100%. All of us just have to do a bit better.
Yeah. Indeed, we need continuous improvements. The 9% or around 9% is really like a reality check for all of us that we're still not there yet, and there's so many work to be done. I'm now would like to move to the section where we share some our reflections on what does sustainability mean to each of us based on our regions and backgrounds. Where do we fit against the pillars of circular economy principles? Would you like to start, Angelica?
Yes, sure. For me, I don't know if it has been a bit of a unique tree-board perception, but for me, it started everything because I really like astronomy and everything related with the stars in the universe. So basically, when we started thinking that we were the only ones in the universe, the Earth was the center of the universe, it's called the geocentric model. That was in 380 BC. For me, it's when the first humans, we realized we're so big, we have so many things for each other. And then we start exploring and mapping the world, when cartography begins, let's say early 2300s BC also. And we start thinking, actually we have different type of ecosystems, different type of environment. We start discovering different type of weathers among regions. And I think this was key for humans to start thinking about resources and different type of livings around the world, right? And basically, when as Caitlin had mentioned before, when the Industrial Revolution started, that basically we create all of these great inventions like electricity, steam engine, and all of these great inventions that we are using now, we completely changed the game for humanity in the early 18th century, right? So after that, we create a completely new geological era that is called the Anthropocene. But all of these topics, we will touch it later on because they are super, super related with climate change. And also now with the new technological era, we are entering to a completely different level. So, but I think for me, this is sustainability. It's the journey where humans have tried to understand the world, understand the resources that we have available, how they are connected, and the cycles that we are living in air, soil, and water, and all the different resources that we have on Earth. So for me, this is a bit the way I see it.
What pillar of sustainability or circularity do you sort of fit, or do you? I know there's a lot of overlap, but is there a particular pillar that you? Yeah.
I would say. Well, maybe as I mentioned in our first episode and intro, I'm an environmental engineer. So, of course, I like a lot of the environmental topics. So maybe this will be a bit more the things that I will be bringing. I love the environmental topics like GHG emissions, water pollution, everything related to it, but also a bit of philosophy. I accepted it. I love philosophy and I love a bit astronomy. So everything that you will see me commenting here, it will be a bit of a mix between these three factors. So the environmental thing, which I love, astronomy, which I think is the way that humans try to understand something that is beyond Earth, which I think is very important to our perception of our own existence and how we behave in this planet. And finally, philosophy, which is also a bit of why we behave the way we behave. Where does it come from in our minds and in our conscious? So for me, those three things are too linked together to even separate it. So that's more or less the insights and reflections that you will get for me. If you like that, let me know.
Very good, very good. And what about you, Saeed? What about you?
Yeah, sure. Like my take, or like at personal level, I grew up in an environment where I lived sustainability in a way or another, or circularity. I'll give maybe a practical example. So my mom is someone who would not let you have like food waste. It's like, it's impossible. It's like a must to just have all the food there consumed, or also plan to have less food the next days, or so on and so forth. And whenever it happens that we have like extra food, for instance, we always go and share it with someone in our neighborhood. Just for context, we grew up in a countryside, so we really had like a close relation with like our neighbors, and that was like really, even like before knowing about what is circularity, what is sustainability. And then I grew up, and then I studied what it is. And it's when I studied what it is, it was more like not lifestyle wise, but more like business, how actually to implement it on the business side. And of course, I got to learn about the gaps that we see at industry level and in businesses, because everyone could claim they are trying to implement sustainability or like circularity in their business, but it's not always the case. And my really interest is how to do that, and implement it in a way that, okay, environmentally is accepted and environmentally friendly, and at the same time it's viable in terms like business, in terms of like viability of the business. I think that's the challenge today, because if we address that challenge, we can continue our growth, economic growth, while being sustainable, while being like rather like environmentally sustainable. I think maybe that's the challenge, because everyone, or most of people, like maybe average people, think about sustainability, they only think about environmental aspect of it, and therefore they forget about, or they don't know about the fact that business needs to run. They need to be viable in order to continue. Otherwise, we'll not be able to pay our bills. We'll not be able to continue the way it works today. So that's in brief probably my take and my interest today. What about you, Caitlin?
Yeah, I just love hearing about your backgrounds. First, I just imagine growing up in the Moroccan countryside. Such a lovely image. So for me, I had a bit of a wild upbringing, but a lot of it, I was born and raised in Wisconsin, and there's a lot of nature. And again, I also was in the countryside, spent some time living on my grandma's farm. So we would, help out on the farm. So that connection with the horses and our goat Duncan and feeding the baby cows or calves, I guess.
I'm so jealous. Can we go to the grandma farm?
Just going for horseback rides with Nana and checking the birds, checking the bird's nest to see if there's any eggs, or helping Nana in the garden. My favorite task though was helping clean up the horse poo with the pooper scooper. I don't know why I was so obsessed with it, but I loved it. So I think that really played a big role in my life. I just thought, there's so much nature in Wisconsin, and I think I didn't realize it, wasn't conscious at the time, but I would organize litter cleanups, and it just kind of was, just a part of me that I didn't actually understand. And so I guess I have a really, of course, living in Australia for 10 years, it's a beautiful country, and you've got everything from beaches to desert to mountains to rainforest. It's amazing, great barrier reef. And I think I really have this connection with nature that we all have in some way, because we are nature. But it just, I think I'm really connected to the environmental sustainability side of things, but I understand that the social and economic, like you can't have sustainability without bringing people into the equation, without bringing money into the equation, and you can't achieve that without living circular and regenerating nature and keeping materials, designing waste out of the equation to start with. So I can't really say which pillar or circular economy principle I fit into specifically, because they all intertwine and all rely on each other. But I'm just very thankful for my background and my upbringing in and my life experiences around the world that has just kind of strengthened my passion and my calling for working towards a more sustainable future.
Yeah. It's very nice.
Yeah, indeed. Interesting story, and I think our upbringing influence pretty much what we do when we get older. And interesting to have this sustainability values or culture as part of our upbringing. Thanks for sharing all those insights. I think we are at the end of our episodes today, and maybe some takeaways that I would like to share is from our today's episode is that sustainability is not a concept of today. It has been there for a long time ago, and circularity, on the other hand, is relatively new. We also discussed the relationship between circularity or circular economy and sustainability. So circular economy is a way to achieve sustainability. And also very important to realize that there is an interconnection between social aspects, environmental and economic aspects when it comes to sustainability. We should try to keep all those three in mind when we try to address the topic and the concept of sustainability in general.
Yeah.
So I think that's it from my side. I would leave you with a very nice recommendation from Caitlin to share. It's probably the gift of today's podcast.
The gift. I like it. Yeah, this is like a recommendation or unsolicited recommendation, but it ties really well with today's episode on circularity. So if you're a visual person, there's an absolutely amazing documentary on the streaming platform Curiosity, and it's called Go Circular, which basically sums up everything we've discussed here today. And I just highly recommend going and having a watch. We'll put the link in the show notes for you, so it should be easier for you to find. So that's the gift.
Amazing.
Of today.
Yes.
Yeah, you gotta watch it. It's very nice.
Yeah, amazing. So thank you all for listening, and see you next time then.
See you next time.
Thank you so much for listening.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
And that wraps up episode 2 of Millennials Gone Circular, where we explore the difference between sustainability and circularity. Before we go, Millennials Gone Circular is a production of The Waste Not Spot. The Waste Not Spot recognizes the many traditional landowners around the world and their continued stewardship of the planet. We pay our respects and offer our deepest gratitude. We've said it once, but we'll say it a million times. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'd be ever so grateful if you would rate, follow, or share this episode with a friend or a colleague. It costs nothing and helps us reach more people around the globe who want to learn and make positive changes in their own corner of the world. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Waste Not Spot, and join our LinkedIn community at Millennials Gone Circular. Have you got a burning question you'd like answered on the pod? Send us your voice note through Instagram DM or email us at hello@thewastenotspot.com. We also love hearing all of your sustainability and circular successes and learnings. Send those through as well. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Millennials Gone Circular. Bye for now.